This week, Paul and I discuss how to land a job in application security. In the news, Facebook loses at least 50 million access tokens. Symantec reports that forum jacking is on the rise. And Google admits that it allows hundreds of companies to read your email. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production. Layered Insight is the industry's first embedded security approach for containers. Trusted by Global 1000 enterprises to secure their containerized applications, it's the only solution that requires no root privileges, has zero dependency on the underlying infrastructure, and is fully portable across any container environment. Unify DevOps and SecOps, enabling the rapid development of containerized applications without worrying about security. To learn more, please visit layeredinsight.com/ASW. Rapid7 powers the practice of SecOps. Using shared data, analytics, and automated workflows, SecOps unites IT, DevOps, and security teams to make security an outcome of innovation. Rapid7 combines technology, expertise, and advocacy to drive vulnerability management, application security, incident detection, and log management for more than 7,000 organizations worldwide. Power up your SecOps practice with a free trial at rapid7.com/securityweekly.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 34, our 35th episode of Application Security Weekly. I'm, of course, your host, Keith Hoodlet, and I'm excited to be joined once again by my illustrious co-host, Paul Asadorian.
Thanks, Keith. It's good to be here today on Application Security Weekly. Always fun times. Got good topics, good stories.
Indeed, and I see you.
You see me? Yes, I'm here. Keith is frozen on the lines. Oh, you're right, Keith. It looked like you're a robot and you kind of like reset.
Uh-oh. Did my camera like die and back? Am I still good?
Your camera and your audio died and then hopefully came back.
Okay, cool. Looks like we're good.
We're good.
Hey, so a couple of quick announcements before we jump in here. I know that, first of all, you should check out our on-demand material because some of our previously recorded webcasts are now available on demand at securityweekly.com/on-demand. I know that I've been on probably a couple of them myself, but we've got Endgame, Logarithm, Black Hills InfoSec, of course, Javelin Networks, Signal Sciences, StealthBit, and a bunch of other stuff on there. So go check it out because it's pretty awesome domain tools as well. Had some really great conversations with them recently. Also, DerbyCon is holding its first ever mental health and wellness workshop where I'll be speaking this coming Friday at 1 o'clock. But if you want to help support their efforts, please go to derbycon.com/wellness. You can donate. Any funds that are not used for supplies to be given out at the conference are going to be given to accredited nonprofit institutions that can benefit our community and others around the world. So definitely go check that out.
Now, Keith, how does that work? Is it like a conference within a conference and there's like tracks with people speaking, or like how is I'm just curious how the wellness thing is going to work.
Yeah, so Amanda Berlin set that up. So at InfoSister, for those that might know her as her Twitter handle. But basically, it's a one-track sort of mini conference in a conference, kind of like the SE Village, right?
Okay.
So there are speakers there, but there are tables set up. So there's like a drawing table or coloring table. There's like fidget spinners and things like that. Basically, it's just a workshop for a bunch of different speakers that are going to be talking on topics about mental health and wellness, especially as burnout is one of those things in our community that a lot of people suffer from. And so it's driven toward helping people either have coping skills or getting the kind of support and assistance that they need. So to that end, it's got a lot of different things going on, including like a yoga workshop. I think there's some meditation going on as well.
So I should bring my yoga pants.
You absolutely should bring your yoga pants. Yes, in fact, you should come early on Friday morning and yoga it up. Why not? That'd be great.
Also, you mentioned coloring books, and there may be some people confused about that. It's actually very soothing to color.
Yeah.
Like it's very. In fact, last night at dinner with my family, they drop off all the coloring books and crayons and
for
stuff.
The kids.
And my kids were actually being good for once and preoccupied, and I was just sitting there talking to my kids and my wife, and she's like, "Are you actually coloring?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's very therapeutic." It was a birthday cake with nice colors. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I mean, yeah, there's lots of opportunity out there. It's funny because there's so many different things that, like, as kids, we would do, and then as adults, you're like coloring books. But then suddenly you start coloring, you're like, actually, no, this is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Amanda's been putting this together, and so I've been just trying to help get the word out, and help with the fundraising side of things. And she asked for speakers, and I put in my talk on time management. So. I'll be speaking on a topic that I call hacking the TARDIS, or time management for InfoSec professionals, at 1 o'clock on Friday.
Also,
So
ironically, when some of my wife's friends and I would get together and there was children present, so my wife's friends are single, when they would talk about having sexual relations, they would refer to it as coloring. And you can just,
oh my,
your imagination can run wild from there as to how that was described. But now one of our friends' children just turned 18, and she's like, I knew exactly what you guys were talking about when you were talking about coloring, by the way. You thought you were being cute, but you really weren't. I just reminded me of that.
Oh man, yeah, it's like you were trying to be sly and then not being sly at all. Like, they're kids. Kids are smart, man. Like, you got to give them credit. Like, they really do understand a lot of things, even though you think they don't.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so kind of, shifting gears at this point, I wanted to dive into a topic that's near and dear to me. So as a manager now at Thermo Fisher Scientific, of course, I'm in the role of hiring other individuals inside the organization. And one of the things I've been doing lately is, helping people, either giving them feedback on terms of things that they can do to get a job in application security, or actually interviewing people that are looking for a job. Because I've got a number of openings that I've been filling. And in fact, at DerbyCon, I will be there, talking to people if they're interested in trying to get a job at Thermo Fisher, or even, other companies as well, to give them feedback. But I thought this might be a good kind of lead into that hiring village and workshop that they also have at DerbyCon. So specifically to AppSec, I wanted to start off with, some ideas that I had around if you're working on your resume, or you're thinking about you want to get into AppSec, maybe you're coming from a different role. So maybe you're coming from IT, maybe you're coming from traditional network pen testing, and you want to build up your skills. I kind of put together in the show notes a few things that I thought people would benefit from. So, Paul, I mean, the first one right off the bat is the idea of attending local meetups and conferences. Now, you go to a lot of conferences, especially as part of Security Weekly. So, first, are there kind of any that you recommend going to in terms of, things that people might benefit from just getting exposure to the broader industry, and kind of maybe honing in on skill sets that they might enjoy?
I actually, I mean, it depends on what your goals are for attending conferences. In the context of landing a job, I like your suggestion here in the show notes of Security B-Sides events.
Yep.
Well, because if you're looking for a job, maybe you don't have one, which means you likely don't have a lot of income coming in, which means going to a conference that is either free or at very low cost is probably very appealing to you in that light. Also, Security B-Sides happen all across the world. There might be one that is one that is the most geographically close to you. And since they happen all over the world, you can likely find one that you can travel to without paying for an airline ticket, necessarily. So that's a great recommendation for that reason. The other reason I like Security B-Sides in this context is because they tend to be very community oriented, not so much industry oriented some do have traditional industry sponsors. Much of the sponsorships, as I've noticed, and in talking with Jack Daniel and others that run B-Sides, they're very much human resources focused. So they tend to focus on sponsors for B-Sides that are looking to recruit people from the security community. So you have that aspect. Plus the talks are absolutely fantastic at Security B-Sides. There's typically lots of different tracks for all kinds of different topics and skill levels. So that's a perfect storm, right? Like they're inexpensive to or free to attend. They are sharing information from the community, so you get to learn, and you get exposure to companies that might be hiring. So, I mean, you nailed it, Keith. I mean, that is my recommended strategy if you're going to be looking for a job to attend a conference.
And I mean, quite frankly, there are definitely some world-class speakers that go to Security B-Sides, if not organizers of the Security B-Sides, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, Paul, you've spoken at B-Sides Boston a couple of times. I know that last year when I was helping organize, you were there, I think, giving 2 talks.
Well, not just me, but Dave Kennedy was one of the keynotes, as was Jack Daniel. So,
yeah. I mean, right. Like you get these people that you see at DerbyCon, for example, like, Dave Kennedy, or at B-Sides Las Vegas, Jack
Hmm.
Daniel. And these are people that, are well known and well respected in our community. And they're speaking at B-Sides in a lot of different places. Right.
I
So
think there's a lot of value
I
there. I
know.
mean, I've gained some insights as to what some people charge to deliver keynotes at larger conferences, and it's quite a bit. And so
Yeah.
when you go to these, one of the reasons why those conferences cost money is if they're bringing in a large keynote speaker, I think what many might not realize is that there's a cost associated with bringing that person in above and beyond your typical stipend or travel expenses. Like there's a substantial fee, and it varies, by person to person, sure. I don't know that as an attendee, you'll necessarily get more or less value out of those speakers. I mean, your mileage is going to vary. I mean, it could be that someone's bringing a big speaker, paying them a lot of money, and you really do get a lot of value out of that. Great, but the local ones that are much more cost effective can be equally, if not more valuable in some cases.
Well, it's also usually a smaller venue, smaller crowd, right? So you actually get an opportunity to sit down and maybe speak with some of these people, right?
That's a
Like,
great point.
so besides Boston, I think 2 years ago, met Dave Kennedy for the first time in
Mm-hmm.
person after, communicating with him on Twitter. Also got to spend some time with Jack actually in person as well, as opposed to, again, knowing him kind of virtually, right? So those are individuals that, for me, like, I generally don't have access to unless I go to an actual conference. And so getting an opportunity to actually speak with people that I really respect in the community was pretty big for me personally. But
Yep.
then there's also people like Josh Marpet does, I think, besides Delaware. I mean, there's a number of people in the
Yeah.
community that are either well connected in terms of maybe you're looking for a job and they happen to be an organizer and know some people that are looking, or they're volunteering or they're speaking, right? And there's almost always an opportunity to get to know people while you're there, right? Because unless it's maybe like B-Sides, I think Atlanta is pretty big, and also B-Sides Charm out in Baltimore
Yep.
is pretty big as well. But otherwise, they're usually a few hundred people.
Yeah. Now, local
You know,
meetups are great, Keith, because those are usually 100% free.
yeah,
I mean, some may charge a small fee, but typically local meetups are free. Here in Rhode Island, it's interesting. We just interviewed Jason Albuquerque from Carousel Industries, which is a local company, and Jason and I
yep,
were talking about enabling the community here in Rhode Island to have more free local meetups. Patrick Laverty, as many know from listening to the show, he runs actually two of the local meetups here in Rhode Island for DC 401. So typically
yep.
there's a DEF CON group with your area code that meets, not in every city, right, but a lot of major cities have that. Also, Patrick runs the local OWASP meetup here in Rhode Island. And Patrick also runs a Layered 8 conference here in Rhode Island, which does cost money to go to, but you can start with those local meetups. Jason, we're just talking about how we need to have more of that, right? I mean, I'm like, dude, my motivation, I want to give back to the community, but also I want to meet people selfishly because I want them to be guests on the show, hosts on the show,
Right.
and things like, and bring them on as speakers or whatever. So
Yeah, and well, April Wright, DEF CON 617,
yeah.
right? Founder of DEF CON 617, was on the show as co-host last week. So yeah, I mean, you find that all the time at local meetups. Again, they're usually free. And Johnny Christmas, I think, is coming on the show either later this month or early next month. Big into the whole Chicago scene in terms of some of their local meetups as well. And so, yeah, if you have an opportunity to go to a local meetup, do it, because I think that you're going to meet a lot of people that are doing interesting work. And even if they're not hiring, they might be able to give you tips on, hey, if you're looking to join, such and such company, they might have some inside knowledge of, learn the following skills. So that was one that I thought was, okay, if you're looking for a job in the security industry, a good place to start is to first figure out what you want to do. And the best way to do that is to go and get exposed to a lot of things. So local meetups, B-Sides conferences were kind of the big two that I came to. The next one, though, I thought was interesting because, especially in application security, you need to be able to kind of write applications or at least understand how they're written. And so coding skills, I think for security professionals in general, but specifically in application security, is going to be a really big deal if it isn't already. And there's this one site that I really like. It's called Code Wars. Now, it's free to use. And what it is it's effectively like kind of puzzle challenges for a lot of different languages. So to sign up, you've got to do basically a challenge. It's really pretty trivial if you've done some coding before, but even if you haven't, you'll learn something in the process. And then once you've gone through that, you can sign up. You can set up like your own clans. So if you have like a local group that you want to get together with and like come up with a clan name and work your way through. Paul, you might appreciate this. So the ranking system that they have within the I think Code Wars is like the Q, so like eighth Q, seventh Q, like all the way down to like the Dons. So it's like it's almost like a martial arts style like ranking.
Oh yeah. I've heard of Code Wars before. I haven't done it, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it's got gosh, so many languages, right? If you wanted to do Python, if you wanted to do Go, if you wanted to do JavaScript or C or Haskell or C++ or Java or almost anything, right? So in my mind, one of those things that the whole idea of sitting down and practicing is going to be important, and having challenges to practice with is even better. So from a coding perspective, if you want to understand the syntax and the language and start to learn some of the nuances of things, Code Wars is going to provide a challenge for you as perhaps a novice programmer to really dive deep, and it will lead to more questions, which ultimately that's a good thing, right? Because then you learn more skills, and then you go into harder challenges, and you learn even more. So that was one thing that I thought that would be really useful for a lot of our listeners if you're just getting into coding or you're interested in coding. Or maybe you want to pick up a new language, right? So there's always, something to do in addition as part of your practice. But
now, Keith,
I've always had fun with it.
Is Pluralsight free? They do have
Plural.
No, does that cost money for everything? Or I thought they had some free, certainly low cost, right?
They might have some stuff. So Pluralsight is one of those things from a coding perspective. It's actually one of the learning platforms that I use personally for. I learned Flask, so Python Flask on there. I've learned JavaScript on there. I've learned several things. And so, yeah, it's a really great platform. The other one as well that I've been looking at lately is Udemy. So there's like the whole idea with Udemy is certain classes will actually let you download that content to your computer after you've purchased it, but they have some weekends where it's like special sales. So like the Labor Day weekend, they had classes that might cost like $150 or $200 were selling for like $11, right? So I bought like 5 or 6 classes that weekend. But those are really good too, because those, you can see how many downloads they have, how well ranked they are. They have almost everything you can think from a programming perspective as well. I don't know, Paul, have you been looking at anything else from like a training and learning perspective in coding, or anything that you'd recommend?
I just thought of the Humble bundles. I've used those in the past too. Those are good. And your money goes, you get to decide how much of a donation goes to a particular charity and how much goes to the actual organization selling it, right? Or goes to, I think, the Humble bundle. I forget how it works, right? But you've got a sliding scale,
right?
Yeah, of like donation versus payment. And you got to keep an eye on, because basically it's a bundle of books and videos. So it's PDFs and videos that are focused on a specific topic. I know when I was trying to understand Docker and containers, I bought the container bundle in the books, and they were really good at especially giving you that fundamental knowledge. I think what many of us, myself included, struggle with is oftentimes like you don't understand enough to even ask the question or go Google search about something. And a Humble bundle like that gives you that foundation where you can be like, okay, now I understand the fundamentals, so I can go focus on an area and I know how to ask questions now.
Yeah, and that's one thing that, especially for programming languages, right? So the No Starch Press Humble bundles, whenever I see No Starch Press put things out, I always go look at it, because they, as publishers, they have so many good books on different languages. Python is one that I've really enjoyed. In fact, I used stuff from the Automate the Boring Stuff book that's by No Starch Press to actually create a Python script that would allow me to download all of the content from all of my Udemy courses automatically, because I didn't want to sit and click through 400 videos and download each one. So yeah, my flight out to Australia in a few weeks will have plenty of viewing material, something like 30 hours of content to actually sit down and watch. So yeah, my flights are pretty much now taken care of in terms of, things to do. So yeah, there's a lot you can find there. No Starch Press is a great publisher of a lot of different books for a lot of different languages, and any bundle that they run, I almost always go and look at, if not buy. In some cases, I buy a bundle that maybe the top level bundle has a book that I don't have, and every other book that I've already got like 3 copies of. But that's one I've enjoyed as well. Any others that come to mind, Paul, that you wanted to talk about?
No, those are the major ones. It's interesting. Someone was just asking me how they get up to speed on some technology. I forget what it was, but I think I found that, I think it was Security Onion. It was Security Onion. And I found that, I think Pluralsight, Udemy, and maybe Cybrary was the other one, had materials on that. They were looking for more of a structured tutorial rather than like one-off documentation or YouTube videos, which I get that can be pretty frustrating.
Yeah, and some people they learn in different ways too, right? So
Yeah.
Cybrary is another good one, cybrary.it.
Mm-hmm.
So they offer free content as well for a number of different topics related to security. And I agree. Like sometimes for me, there's a gentle balance, right? Because it's good to have the actual content to sit down and watch or listen to, but hands-on keyboard actually doing it makes all the difference, right? And you can't just sit there and kind of sponge it all in because it might be rote knowledge that you can repeat back, but it's not knowledge that you can actually leverage or use unless you're sitting down at the keyboard and doing something. Thus, I think pairing it with something like Code Wars, where you actually are taking the knowledge you're learning and then applying it to something, whether it's a project or little tasks or challenges, will help you learn faster. So from a coding perspective, those are all really great recommendations. On the other side of it, though, from like the hacking perspective, right? So going out and learning how to do some of these things. And the one thing that I actually point to as a really good centralized, free, open source tool that I really like was put together by Jason Haddix. And in this case, JP Villanueva is another person that contributed to that, is the Bug Crowd University stuff out on GitHub. So what they've done is they've basically taken kind of a pyramid style approach to the basics of application security, mid-tier challenges, and then kind of the top level challenges, and have walked through things like how to use Burp Suite Pro effectively. But also Jason Haddock's talk on the Bug Hunters methodology V3, I think is what he's up to at this point, has a lot of recommendations of books you should go out and consider buying. In fact, that's one of the next things that I have on the list, so I'll recommend that in a moment. But he also talks about some other resources in his talk, and that's all listed inside of the Bug Crowd University GitHub page. And then on top of that, they have a biannual conference, I think, at this point, where they actually have a bunch of speakers in the Bug Hunter kind of world talk about application security things that they've been working on. So they also have YouTube links to all those videos from that virtual conference that they run. And again, that's a free conference, right? So there's another thing from the hacking perspective that you can zero in on and go back and look at all the past content from. So, but speaking of books, and this is one that I get questioned about a lot, the Web Application Hacker's Handbook, although it's something like 7 years old at this point for version 2, is a solid resource. And for me, like, even though it has a lot of technologies that it talks about that are outdated, much of the internet today, by the way, is still outdated technology. So I find that it's both a really useful book to go and read, and I'd actually recommend for someone that's new to the space, read it cover to cover, right? As much as it's intended to be a reference book, going and actually reading all the way through it will help you put everything together in a way that I think can really help folks that are new. Paul, I don't know, from the hacking side, especially on the web hacking side, I don't know if you had additional resources that you've either seen or heard about kind of your travels throughout the space.
Yeah, not so much with books. I think the next one, as in practice, you recommend one that I hadn't seen before. However, when I give this in my Kung Fu talk, actually, Ed Scotus at Counterhack Challenges, it's counterhack.net. The link's in my presentation somewhere, but he archives all of his hacking challenges. And that's one where I recommend, like, Ed's been doing this free challenge for 6+ years now. And not only does he come out with a new challenge every year, but every past year, you can access those challenges. It's all completely free. The nice part about previous challenges is that all the answers are there too. So you can kind of like self-study and work through it. Like if you get stuck, you can kind of go look up the answer and then, research and that kind of thing. So that's my top pick. The holiday hack challenges is what he calls them now. Before they were actually just challenges. That would be my top pick for practicing.
For sure. And I think the one that was like maybe, 2 years ago, something like that, was all based on Node.js, which, by the way, if you're looking for like a modern stack, like that is the one to go do. So yeah, when I actually remember that year, I didn't get much time to play that one, but I remember listening to Paul Security Weekly when he was on talking about it, and I was like, home? Sweet.
That might have been Gnome in Your Home. Could be.
Yeah, I think that was Gnome in Your Home, was the year that he was doing that. Because then the following year, which I think was last year, was like, Saving Christmas or something like that. So they have KringleCon, I think, coming up this year, which is the other one that he's doing next. So
he's coming on the Paul Security Weekly show to announce it as well this year, which is awesome. We love it when Ed does that every year. It's a great contribution to the community.
It is. It absolutely is, and it has different levels of challenges too. Like the play, you can start out with the very basic knowledge, and then you kind of work your way up, right? So for me, I think that it's one of those things that it's built for all different levels of experience, and it's actually something that a number of people in the community that I see do this with their family, right? Their children, because in the last several years now, he's made it into an actual like a game, like I remember the one that was the gnome in your home. It was almost like playing like a Final Fantasy like 2D game where you're like walking around on squares and stuff. That was fun.
Pretty cool.
The one that I recommended in this case was actually the OWASP Juice Shop application. So that is also free and open source. It does have a number of challenges that are, it has the solutions there. This is a modern, I believe it's Angular JS. It might be one of the more modern Angular stacks. As a vulnerable application, as kind of that newfangled stack. There's of course the damn vulnerable web app, or DVWA, that's still out there. There's
that
also
one's kind of dated today though.
Yeah, I mean, well, it isn't. It isn't though. So if you're looking to learn like SQL injection, for example,
sure.
DVWA actually has some pretty good training on that, and some of it's, especially like on the hard mode challenge, is pretty tough. Like it actually is one of those things that you really got to think about. Not to mention the one thing that I did with DVWA that I recommend people that are trying to learn Docker do, is I actually rolled it into a Docker container so that I could play with it anywhere, and I could just like spin it up locally on my system.
Or you could cheat and find the other 3 or 4 people that have done that as well and put it in Docker Hub like I did recently.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it is same. You totally could, right? But I actually challenge those people out there that if you want to learn Docker,
that's a great point.
It's a great test case, and then you can go and hack on it, and then just in the way that Docker is designed to be used, blow it away and use a new one, right? So that was one that I definitely wanted to talk about. Now, the next thing as well is for people that want to take it to the next level, right? That they actually want to go out and practice some of this. I strongly recommend signing up on a bug bounty program. Now, for me, I'm a little bit biased, right? I used to work at Bug Crowd, so I know kind of the inner workings of the way that they actually operate. But from a community perspective, the things that they're doing and the things that they're giving back, as well as, of course, the interactions with the support folks and the people that do triage and validation, I strongly recommend working with them, only because they have a pretty good plethora of companies that you can work on from the start. I know that Ford, I believe, just came out with a public program. Netgear is another public program that has really broad application, right? Like you can go after almost anything that they own. And granted, those aren't paid programs, at least for some of the stuff that they do. But if you're getting new to the space and you want to try and figure out how some of these hacks work in the real world, well, there's no better place to learn than some actual company stuff. So, and they invite you to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Keith, that, it used to be before there were bug bounties that when you wanted to test your skills, you had to create your own consulting company and get permission and then go do it. And, the danger of that is if you haven't practiced it in the real world, it's going to be a learning experience, and you hope that you get a good mentor early on to work with. As I did when I started my consulting company, I'd partner with other organizations and do the tests with them as I learned, and that was very much how it happened. Today, I think you're right. If you want to get real-world hands-on experience, I would recommend Bug Crowd and going to some of their programs, because you get to basically hack with permission. Now, very, very important to follow those rules of engagement. Don't just go willy-nilly. Like you have to, and ask questions about that rules of engagement. If you have never engaged in any type of testing, make sure you ask people who have, or ask Bug Crowd directly before you do things and say, I would recommend that you read the rules of engagement, interpret them before you send a packet on the network. If you're not sure, or even if you are, and it's the first time you're doing it, ask and say, hey, if I do this, it's acceptable in the rules of engagement, correct? And get some verification on that.
Right. And yeah, they have, the nice thing is, again, like to the program scope or the program brief that they have on the pages is pretty explicit as to really what you can do and really what you can't do. Like you said, if you have questions, especially a lot of these companies, whether it's BugCrowd or others, if you go out onto Twitter and you just like at them, you'll probably get a response from the actual handle, plus maybe Jason Haddix or Casey Ellis or others that are following along, right? So you get actual interactions from real people to give you feedback on the situation. So, and that's critical, right? Especially if you're new to this, because Yeah, if you do something wrong and you mess up a production system for a big company, yeah, as much as those rules might say certain things and you're just misinterpreting them, you got to be real careful about that. So making sure that you really understand what you're doing is also important, which I think goes back to some of the other things we've said, right? Like if you know what a SQL injection is and it says no SQL injection, you're okay. But if you don't know what a SQL
Yeah.
injection is and you're just like going and hacking away at this thing and you're like, oh, I'm going to try a SQL injection, yeah, you probably want to know exactly what you're doing or what it could do before you try that, like drop tables, for example.
Yes,
Um,
certainly.
so that's kind of the big one. The last one that I had on this, though, is committing code on open source or personal projects, right? So whether you're contributing to maybe some like new privacy aware browsers like Brave or the OWASP Zap project for like, again, that's the Z attack proxy or their open source Java based proxy. That's a kind of free version as compared to say maybe Burp Suite Pro, which is you got to pay for it. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for a lot of different organizations or companies that could benefit from contributions that you might make if you have coding skills, or hey, working on your own projects is a really great way to build your resume. And to that end as well, if you've built some cool tools, maybe you talk about them at a B-Sides or maybe you talk about them at a bigger conference, right? So there's a lot of benefit to actually building things and showing off what you've built. So that's kind of my recommendation as well. Paul, I don't know if you had anything to add on that front, maybe some projects that you think would be good to contribute to.
No, I think you should do that, as well as writing about your contributions as well. I think that
Yeah, blogging.
maintaining some kind of blog and showcasing your communication skills, or even if it's not to showcase your communication skills, even it's just to show that you're passionate to allow others to learn and write about it. That's big when I hire people anyway. Is if not only do they contribute, but are they writing about it as well?
Yeah, they're giving back to the community in some way, right? Maybe they're not necessarily contributing code, but maybe they're writing a new tool, or maybe they've discovered a new way of doing something, or even they've seen a way that it's been done and they do it a little bit more cleanly and write up about that, right? That's a really good point. Is as much as we can go out and hunt bugs all day, which is a lot of fun, if you can't communicate why that's important or what that should mean to the teams that we're trying to help, it's pretty much worthless, right? Like if you can't translate that to somebody that actually needs to fix it, then yeah, you might as well start from square one again.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely a good feedback as well. Paul, unless you had anything to add, I think that pretty much wraps up my general recommendations on, if you're looking to land a job, these are some of the things you should look at doing.
No, I think it's a great list.
Cool. Awesome. Well, with that, we are going to take a short break and then come back for the news.